Hi, my name's Marijke, and I'm going to be debriefing your Hogan results with you. And I've made this video so that you can have some ideas about how to interpret the results, whether you read some of the reports ahead of our conversation or as a good foundation for the conversation that we'll have together. So you've got your reports in hand. Now what? The first thing to know is that you've likely received a total of 4 reports. 3 reports that cover in detail the 3 primary Hogan scales, and 1 report called a flash report that's a summary, a visual summary of the information in the 3 core Hogan reports. I've provided in the email that you received with the Hogan reports some suggestions. So if you do decide to review your reports ahead of our conversation, you know which pages to focus on, particularly in those longer, more detailed reports. So certainly take some time to read through them if you feel inspired to do that, paying perhaps closer attention to the pages that I suggested. I also want to share with you 3 very important reminders about interpreting your results. Again, whether you read them a little bit ahead of time or during our debrief session. The first thing I want to remind you of is how important context is in really understanding the data. So you've got your job, you've got the organization, you've got the team that works with you and maybe for you if you're in a leadership role. And then, of course, you've got your manager. And all of those things create a rich context that means that certain skills, styles, and approaches to work will be more or less effective. So, we're going to be talking about your results in recognizing the context that you're in and how it might matter given how the results might matter given that context. So, very important to remember that there's not a specific profile that's always good for certain types of jobs or always right for another job. The context is rich, and it's important that we consider it carefully in understanding your results. Which brings me to the second important point about your Hogan results, which is that there really is no good or bad Hogan score. Certainly, certain contexts might be better. There might be scores that work better in certain contexts than others. Um, and we will talk about that. But in addition to that, there's many scores on the Hogan that simply reflect certain preferences in your style that are suitable for many, many, many work environments. And I'll give you an example. The learning approach scale, which you'll see on your yellow scores in the reports that you received, the learning approach score has low scores and high scores, or left scores and right scores as you look at the reports. But what it really tells us is about the way that you like to learn, not necessarily whether or not you're a good learner or like to learn or have a learning mindset. It doesn't mean any of those things. It really has to do with the manner in which you like to learn. And I think this is really important because I believe it's sort of part of the human condition to be learning oriented, but we all do it in different ways. Some people really like book learning, classroom learning, text, procedure manuals, that kind of thing, listening to teachers, that sort of thing. And other people really learn well in a hands-on environment, very practical and applied on the job learning. These are just approaches to getting the job done, and one's not necessarily better or worse. So remember, there really is no good or bad score, and pay attention to the tendency to sort of imagine that you either got great scores or you got the bad scores, and recognize that good and bad's not really a thing with these tools. And that brings me to my third and final important reminder related to these results, which is that the terminology can be misleading. I really think the Hogan tools are very valuable, but the fact is that they were created over 3 decades ago by academics and people with a psychology background. So the terms that they use may or may not translate well to some of our pop culture thoughts about these words. And I'll give you a sort of funny example because I often have clients who see that the word hedonism on the MVPI scales, which is the blue scales in your Hogan reports, and think like hedonism, the word hedonism sort of brings up for people this idea that there's maybe an interest in some kind of debauchery or like really wild parties or just kind of like a high intensity level of fun that maybe doesn't work in certain conservative settings and that kind of thing. But the truth is that hedonism really is more about just the importance of having fun and having enjoyment and having sort of that sort of zest for life be a part of our careers. And for some people that's really important. We want to have fun at work. We want to be able to feel like there's a sense of playfulness or a sense of enjoyment in the work that we do. And for some people, it's less important. So don't read too much into the terminology. Recognize that that terminology has a context too, and we'll find the meaning in the reports that is relevant to you and does matter in the way that you work. So um, really looking forward to debriefing your results and just want to make sure that you remember these 3 important things. One, context really matters, so don't forget to consider the context in which you are working as you interpret your results. 2, there's really no good or bad Hogan score on any of the scales. And 3, the terminology in the reports can be misleading, so don't jump to too many conclusions if you can before we talk about it together. And until then, I can't wait to debrief with you. Bye.